So hello. I apologise for a little bit of a delay. We've had a bit of trouble getting my mic going, so hopefully you can hear me. Hi, welcome to our third Inside Dancers Hangouts. We're here to explore the issues that dancers face together. This month we're talking about competition and rivalry. Now I hear a lot about competition and rivalry in amongst teachers and students and dancers that I work with. Competition is a huge part of our industry. We hear about it being cutthroat and, there's a lot of pressure to perform and you've got to be right on the edge of your limits of your abilities to succeed. So competition is a really big part of being a dancer, and it makes it it's a really challenging part too. So I'm really glad you're here and I look forward to getting into this topic today. So if anyone is interested, I've got a little handout with a checklist, some of the main points that I'm talking about today. You can download that if you scroll to the bottom of the page. There's a sign up form. You probably already signed up, so if you just pop your email in there, again, it doesn't actually do anything. But when you've done that, it'll send you to a page where you can download the handout. So I encourage you to do that. And you can, of course, share this with your friends if you find it's really, mind-blowing. Okay, so let's get into it. I wanted to just start by looking at, what are some of the real ways that competition can get to us as dancers. So I'm just going to share my slides with you again, and we'll see if we can get this. Where are we? Okay, so how does competition happen for dancers? Well, it happens, in competitions, in Eisteddfods and actual competitions. But it also happens a lot for dancers in class, after class, before class. Someone's doing turns or tours or stretching, and there's this sense of comparison that doesn't really matter where you are, as long as you're dancing and there's other people around, competition happens. It also happens between individuals, groups. So whether that's, touring groups or, troops. Can happen between siblings. A lot of the time it can happen between siblings. I know for myself, my sister was 6 years older than me, but I knew exactly what mark she got for her exams. And when I got to the point that I got to that level, I definitely wanted to beat my sister. So even if it's not, at the same time, you can still have competition even through generations. Parents who've been dancers, children feeling they need to prove themselves or live up to expectations. And you can have competition with yourself. So there can be a real drive and that real sense of I'm my own worst enemy here. Okay, so I'll talk just quickly now about the pros of competition and the cons of competition, and then we'll come back to some stuff. I'll tell you a bit of my own story. So as far as the pros and cons of competition goes, competitions can be great in that they push you to excel. There's nothing like competition to set the tone and set a milestone for you to really focus clearly on increasing your ability in getting your performance aspect of your work really, really ripe, because a lot of the time we focus on technique, whereas when we get to competition, we need to make sure we're performing well. Competition teaches us how to perform under pressure. Like I said, our industry can be quite cutthroat. So competition is actually a great ground to practice performing under that pressure, because if you can perform in a competition situation and cope well and stay calm and focused, you can perform anywhere on a stage with an audience that's paying money to see you. It's so much easier. So if you can perform in a competition situation, then you're pretty much set to go. Competition, you also get feedback on your progress. Now that's sometimes helpful. It's not always helpful, but you do get a sense of external feedback. So I don't want people to rely too much on external feedback, but it is a benefit of it. You also gain performance experience, which is one of the reasons so many people go into competition, is because, they just get out on a stage And that's, you know, that's going to teach you heaps about how to be a performer. And it can also build your confidence when you feel that you can do it. Now, that depends on what your goals are and how you measure your success, but it can build your confidence. Okay, let's look quickly at what the cons are of competition. So, unfortunately, competition has a downside to it. Competition can be stressful. There's a lot of pressure to perform, and when we feel pressure, we feel afraid usually, and we fear failure. And when you feel failure, you generally aren't going to dance at your best. You're going to tense up, and you're not going to have great blood flow to the parts of your brain that help you think and problem solve and remember your steps. And has anyone ever gone onto stage and they're just about to go on and get a mental blank? That's fear, basically. So yeah, sometimes competition can bring out the worst in us rather than the best. When we compare ourselves with others, that can lead to self-doubt and envy. We can get jealous of other people. And yeah, we really get our focus externally rather than on our own selves, and we can't control other people. So that's a real sort of bind to get yourself into. You also have a decreased chance of experiencing flow when you're in competition, just because of that fear factor and the fact that you're being watched and you're being judged can really make you self-conscious. And we experience flow, which is when we really get lost in our movements and you just focused on the process of what you're doing, and you just forget time, you forget what's happening, and you just get lost in your movement. And so that's a really beautiful way to perform. But when we're being judged and we feel that expectation on us, we actually can have less chance of experiencing flow. And finally, if you are someone who wins a lot, or you tend to be at the top edge, then you can fear losing your status when you're in competitions, because there's a sense that you are expected to perform like this. And so there's a sense of, can I keep this up? And are people going to realize that I'm not as good as they think I am? So it can, again, that's another way that fear can come out. All right, so that's some of the pros and cons of competition. It's not all good, it's not all bad. We've got to learn how to harness the good stuff and manage the difficult stuff if we want to learn how to perform well in competition and how to really make the most of what we do as dancers. Okay, let me come back to you. Oops, here we go. I'm back. Hello. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about my own experience with competition, because this is something that honestly, it really gets to me. Competition, I find myself being more competitive than I wish I was. It's a real struggle for me, because I always wanted to be the best as a dancer, and I guess everyone does. But at the same time, so I was competitive with other people, but at the same time, I really didn't like that competitiveness in myself. I felt like I really wanted to be someone who wasn't affected by competition, someone who wasn't jealous and envious or feeling so negative about myself. I really wanted to be positive. So when I found myself getting competitive and comparing myself, it really kind of grated up against me, going, hang on, this isn't how I want to be. And it's actually taken me a lot of work in, reflection and, working with my supervisor who I counsel with, even now, to realize how much that competition, competitiveness is still at me in my life. And so one of the things I've realized is that competitiveness, it seems like I always feel like competitiveness feels like a really primitive level kind of aggression, there's a sense of I have to, there's a survival element to it, where I've got to win, or I've got to be the best, because there's a sense of my own survival is at stake here. And I guess in some sense, when I spoke earlier just then about fear, that's that primitive response that comes up instinctively in our bodies when we feel like we're being judged, we feel like we're being, put under pressure. So our body gets filled with adrenaline, and we, can have that fight or flight or freeze response. And so in some ways, competition does invoke this primitive part of us. And so it seems like competitiveness can be quite destructive. But when I looked at it more when I was doing my own work, I realized that competitiveness at the very, very core is actually reveals really, really normal needs and really, really healthy needs. It's just finding a way to meet them that's not really intended for it. Let me explain. When you feel competitive, the drive behind competition is not to win or to impress others and to be the best, even though it feels like it. Underneath that desire to be the best and to impress is a real sense of wanting to be loved, wanting to be accepted, wanting to be valued. And when we go into competition, the reason why so many people get on edge, whether that's the teachers or the parents, you know, poor parents, because when parents are at a competition and their kids are dancing, they're totally out of control. They can't even, you know, it's their child that's dancing, yet they feel that expectation and that weight of judgment and pressure. So when we feel this pressure and it's out of our control, that's when our fear response comes up. So let me get back to my story. Competition draws out all these really, really deep needs. The need to be loved, the need to have self-esteem and self-confidence, the need to be in control. And so when we're in a performance situation where someone's judging us and one person out of 30 gets to win a prize, we're not in control of that. And so when these basic needs are kind of brought up, we get right on edge. But those basic needs are actually good. It's a good need to have to be loved. It's a good need to have to feel self-confident and self-esteem. It's a good need to be in control. We've just got to find ways to do that and bring that into your competition. So in terms of your sense of control, you can do that by focusing on your goals. What am I here for? What can I control about my performance? Even if I'm in a competition situation, I can't necessarily control the outcome. I can't control who wins. I can't control how other people dance or how the adjudicator judges, but I can control how I perform. And so maybe your goals need to be stuff like, how can I stay calm? How can I focus on my presentation? How can I give the most of myself into this performance? And measure your success based on how you do with that rather than what the outcome is, and be able to be holding your own in that sense. In terms of self-esteem, when you're in a competition situation, you need to know who you are and what your strengths are and what it is about you that makes you unique and worth watching and worth for other people to actually enjoy watching you. You need to know what your strengths are. So to find your confidence, you don't actually get that from the results of the competition. You get that from yourself, and you get that from the people who love you regardless of how you perform. So you need to find the people who you know love you, and you need to remind yourself that if they were the only one watching, how would I perform in this competition? If it was just, I don't know, my grandma or my dog, because I know my dog loves me unconditionally. If I was just in a vacuum, performing for my dog, how would I dance with that sense of freedom? So we've got to give ourselves some space to be free and to perform freely and to somewhat ignore the competition if you want to actually dance at your best and do well in it. And in terms of that real deep need to feel loved, again, that comes back to your family, the people who love you unconditionally. That's where you need to be finding your sense of, courage to face this competition situation, not from the competition itself. So it draws out really big, deep needs in us. They can be conflicting and confusing. So we've got to find a really firm base to stand with, which comes from our own work. If anyone's wanting some help doing their own work to get in touch with the reasons they can be confident, the reasons that they can know their own strengths and uniqueness, and the ways that they can be strong in the face of competition, get in touch with me. I'd love to work with you, whether that's in person here in Melbourne or on Skype. Yeah, I really want to help dancers to be able to face competition without losing it. Yeah. All right, let me move on. We're going to talk a bit about negative rivalries and positive rivalries, because if you can embrace positive rivalries, we can again shift our perspective, which means that we can make the most out of competition rather than letting it get the better of us. So I'm going to go back to my slides for a tick now. Let me just find them. Okay, so I'm going to talk about 3 questions to help you cope with competition and embrace positive rivalry. And the first question that I want to ask you is, how do you respond when someone else dances well? When you see someone else dance really well, you're standing on the side of a stage at a competition, or you're in class, or you're warming up, or whatever the situation is, when you see someone else dancing well, what's your default? If you have a negative rivalry mindset, you'll probably get jealous. You'll probably start to put yourself down. You'll get critical about yourself and tell yourself all the things that you're not doing and they are. You might dislike them or resent them. You'll probably put yourself under huge pressure to perform, and you'll be focusing on the outcomes and the externals rather than your own process. So if anyone's been down that path, let me just assure you, I've been down there too. It's not pretty, but it happens. And so we just need to be really kind to ourselves. If you get into this space, just know, I really need some love. I really need some self-esteem. I really need some control here. How can I get those things back? If you can find a way to adopt a positive rivalry mindset, instead of that, you'll be able to see the value in the other person's performance. You can be inspired by them. You can be challenged to grow in yourself, and you can focus on what you can learn from their performance rather than just comparing yourself blindly and putting yourself down. So how do we do this? How do we actually develop that positive rivalry mindset? Well, we have to be firm and secure in ourselves. And so, like I said before, that comes down to, am I loved? Who loves me? Do I have self-esteem and self-confidence? Where do I get that from? What is it about me that I can know and be confident in? And thirdly, what can I control in this situation? So to have positive rivalries, you need to have a secure sense of self and self-confidence. And then when someone else performs, you can see the good in it and you can be inspired. So this really needs to start from the inside out. That's why I call this Inside Dancers Hangouts, because it's all about the inside stuff. If we can't find that inside contentment with ourselves, that inside confidence, we're never going to be able to manage the external competition. All right, so the second question we need to ask if we want to embrace positive rivalry. So the first one, I think maybe it's better to ask that question instead of how do you respond? How can I stay confident when someone else dances well? How can you stay confident? So just that's something for you to journal about. What can I do to know? What reminds me that I'm confident? What can I base my confidence in? What evidence do I have that I'm capable of performing at this level, in this context, in front of those people? What can I hold on to and draw on for strength and motivation? Second question you can ask yourself is, what can you learn from your rivals? So remember that, how are they similar and different? Remember, everyone is different. You are unique. And so you will never be able to perform exactly the same way as someone else. So how are you similar? And if you're similar, how can I glean from what they're doing and find a way to apply it to myself, but remembering that you're different. So what is it that I will have to tweak to put onto my own body and into my own dancing? What of their stuff do I actually go, no, that's them, and I want to dance like me. So what can I learn from them? If you start to say, what can I learn? What is it from them that I can take on board, whether that's a work ethic or a style or a confidence that they have? How can I try and experiment with that and put it onto me in my own unique way? So you can start to see rivals as kind of inspiration and a little bit of, you've got a way in to find your path forward for yourself. So when you see someone and you feel competitive towards them, instead of comparing yourself and comparing negatively, you can say, how can I channel that competitiveness into my own work? What can I do with the information I get from how they dance to channel that into my own performance, rehearsal, perspective? The third question you can ask yourself is, why am I really dancing? Because that comes back to your deep inner motivation. Let me just come back onto the screen because I've been looking at that slide for a long time. Sorry, guys. Let me just bring this down a bit. So when you dance from that real inner drive of, this is why I dance, this is why I do what I do. If I asked you, why did you start dancing? Why did you pursue it professionally? Why are you doing this competition? Chances are there's a passion in you. There's something deep down that you just love about it. You love moving. And when you're in a competition situation, you need to get back to that sense of, I am doing this because I love it. I'm doing this because I want the audience to be moved, and I want them to enjoy my performance. I don't want them to think I'm the best and give me a prize. I want them to enjoy it, and they'll enjoy it when I dance at my best, when I give of myself and try and be me, not try and be someone else, when I'm calm and focused. So you've got to get back to that question, why am I really dancing? And channel that when you're in a competitive situation, rather than getting caught up by the person who went on before you and they dance really well, or all the buzz of around the side of stage. How can I dance from that real place in me that bubbles up with joy and excitement and real desire to perform at my best? So ultimately, in order to perform well in competition, you need to ignore the competition and just perform well. It's a bit like race horses. It's just coming into spring racing festival time in Melbourne. So I'm living in Melbourne, where we have the Melbourne Cup and great spring racing. So when it's horses are racing, they have blinders on. They are just focused on their race. They're not focused on the horses next to them. That's purposefully so they don't get distracted. It would be nice if dancers could have blinders on. We probably wouldn't look so cute in our outfits, but we really need to have that blinder on. What is my focus for this competition? And be so secure on what your goal is that it doesn't actually matter about all the rest. I've just looked at the time, but then I realized we did start this a bit late, so I'm going to keep going. We've got some tips for teachers, because I know that when we're dealing with competitions, this is hard for teachers just as much as it is for students. So dancers find competition hard, but teachers, they have the same competitive issues as students do. Teachers are put on display in competition situations, and they need to show themselves as being in control. They're being evaluated just as much as students are. And they also have that secondary level that they feel the expectations that are on their students, that they're partly responsible for that, and yet they're not in control of their students' performance. So teachers can get that fear response coming up in competition situations as well. So I've got some tips for teachers. So let me just go back to my slides, and we'll go through those quickly now. All right, so How to harness positive rivalries in your dances. Now, these are not only all for your competition situations, but also just in the studio, in your regular class, rehearsals, preparations for competitions, and that sort of thing. Okay, first of all, as I said before, it's really important to have a clear goal for your competition. So teachers can really help individual dancers to come up with individual goals for their performance. So they'll be different. And those goals shouldn't be focused on, I want to get a place, I want to, beat this person. They really need to be, what do I want to do to perform at my best? Am I going to focus on presenting well? Am I going to focus on staying calm side of stage? What individual goals will help each student perform at their best? And so then they can know, once they've done their performance, how they went at managing that and actually achieving their own goals. It doesn't matter whether they win or lose. They can feel a sense of success knowing that they have achieved their own goals. So focus on individual goals for each student. I know that takes time, teachers, but if you take the first or the last 5 minutes of your 20-minute private lesson working on your competition dances for your students, it will make such a difference to them and their perception of success. It's a really invaluable step to take, so don't jump over that one. The second thing you can do is to help your students or dancers, remind them to get lost in the movement in their dancing, not to, to actually ignore the competition and to just perform, to enjoy the performance. They're going to have the best impact on the audience when they do that. And if they win, then that's a bonus. And if they lose, well, it doesn't matter. Remind your dancers, you win when you dance at your best, no matter what the outcome. You can make that your school mantra, put it up on a poster on the front of your studio, on top of your mirrors. When you dance at your best, you win, and it doesn't matter what the outcome is. Fourthly, give feedback to your dancers on the qualities in their performance. So if you might not have had a great report, you might not have had much feedback from an examiner who's got a really hard job on their own trying to manage all the expectations. They've got probably a bit of, of the fear response and those chemicals going through their bodies trying to be fair and just in how they judge. So teachers, make sure you give feedback on the qualities of the performance. And if you're not able to be there, get other students to work together to share and to encourage each other and support each other. Oh, that's another tip for a bit later. But look at what the qualities of their performance were, because that's so much more important than the external stuff. Number 5, that should be an and, not a 6. I apologize for my typo. Get your dancers to share their struggles and strategies with each other. This helps, instead of creating competitiveness between students in a class or in a rehearsal, instead of competing against each other, help them to show that no one's, because we always think the people we're competing against are perfect and have no problems and we're terrible. So try and balance it out a bit by getting everyone to share something that they struggle with and some of their strategies for coping with it, because then that gets them on a lot more of an even base rather than there's a class, favorite or someone who seems to be perfect and everyone else is not. So get them to share their struggles and their strategies with each other and keep that kind of balanced perspective. Encourage cooperation between students. So again, if they're going into a competition situation and one student gets very anxious, get the others to help that student to stay calm, whatever that student needs. Get them to give them feedback on their performance and give them measures to say, well, can you measure this? How did they go with their performance? How did they go with their character portrayal, whatever it is. Encourage your students to support each other and to work together. And again, then that balances out the competitiveness. Get your students to focus on learning from each other, not comparing to each other. Comparing students, I've talked about this before, but comparing students with each other is not helpful Everyone is different and unique, and so look at what they can learn. So we're a bit like what we talked about in that second question. How can I learn from my rivals? How are we similar and how are we different? If you can encourage learning, people are going to learn and improve. If you practice comparing, oh, there's another typo. Good on me. I thank everyone for their grace that I'm not obviously not a perfectionist today, am I? There is hope. I'm usually very perfectionistic, so good on me for making typos. Okay, so focus on learning from each other, not comparing to each other. Okay, next one, nurture individual strengths and uniqueness. I've been talking about this the whole time, so hopefully you get that. Focus on developing individual students' confidence. Teach students how to focus past distractions. If that's something teachers need help with, I'm happy to come in and do a workshop on this for you. Students need to know how to focus in a highly pressured situation when there's distractions, when there's competitive things that they are going to get in the way of just focusing on their process and getting into their dancing. So you need to teach them how to do that, and you need to give them opportunities to practice in those performance pressured situations in order to hone their craft. So that's why one of the benefits of competition is learning how to cope with pressure. So remind students, if they've learned how to cope with pressure, even if they failed and they learnt some great tools and skills on how not to do things, they've succeeded in that competition situation. And lastly, acknowledge and manage your own competitiveness. As teachers, your students are looking up to you. They don't want to disappoint you. So do whatever you can to acknowledge when you're getting competitive and find a way to, again, just the same, you have the same needs of love and self-esteem and control. So find a way to ground yourself so that your students can perform well and not be afraid of disappointing you. Okay, so there's some tips for teachers. So I'm really curious to hear how you're all finding this. Has this been helpful to you, this Hangout? If it is, or if it hasn't been, or you have some more questions or ideas for other topics you'd like to cover, there's a Hangout survey. You can click on the link just below the video. Let me know how you found it. And next month, we're going to be talking about perfectionism. So yeah, as I just mentioned, I'm recovering from that and seem to be doing a good job putting typos all over this thing today. So if you're interested in knowing about how to cope with perfectionism as a dancer, then yeah, join us next month for our perfectionism hangout, and you can ask any questions that you have about it in that survey as well. So it's been great having you here. Thank you so much for joining us. Please share this. This will be online for the rest of the month for September. So I look forward to seeing you next month. Thanks, guys. I will get there soon. Hang on. Oh, there it is. Sorry. I'm really saying goodbye now. See ya.